So what we're going to do here tonight, and we're very informal, so jump in if you have questions as we go along. But I'm going to start off and give you some background context on why Prince Charming is not a financial plan. Then Sharon's going to talk about the first of what we call the 3 power steps to financial success, which is savings. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the second step, which is investing. And then Sharon's going to wrap with comments on the third step, which is protecting yourself. So without further ado, I'd like to start off by asking you to just sit still for a moment and think about the last time you were with a group of people of varying ages. So it could have been at a movie theater, at a restaurant, maybe at a wedding. And think a little bit about how people were acting, what they were talking about, what they were wearing, and how you felt in response. And now I want you to chew on this. If that was an average slice of America, 7 out of every 10 people you just imagined are living paycheck to paycheck. And you might think, no, not at the wedding I was at, not at the restaurant I was eating at. And we're here to tell you, yeah, that statistic cuts across income spectrums. It's stunning. Sharon and I have met so many people who are living paycheck to paycheck on paychecks that we literally have to use our fingers to count how many zeros are after the digits.
And by the way, that does include financial services, folks. So just so you know.
So in terms of background context, what's going on here? The first thing that we want to say, we want to make 3 points about background context. And the first is the next time you see a guy cruise by in that shiny sports car, or you see a gal trotting around in the latest designer jeans and that fancy handbag, there's a pretty darn good chance that that external image that's being projected may bear no resemblance to their inner financial reality. And the statistics literally bear it out. I mean, again, I can't emphasize this. 70% of Americans are a couple of paychecks at best away from financial disaster. It doesn't matter if you make $40,000 a year or $400,000 a year. If you're spending more than you're making, you're in the same position. Second point that we like to emphasize in terms of background context is how did we get here? And Sharon and I have been traveling around the country, and we've probably talked to thousands of people at this point, and we've not yet ever met a single person that came up and said, hey guys, we're trying to screw up our financial lives. Can you help us make it any worse? I mean, people don't want to make bad financial decisions. So how do we get here? We think it's 3 things. The first is that personal finance still is not something that is formally taught. It's something like parenting that we're all expected to kind of pick up as we go along. But unlike parenting, it's something that societally we don't get a lot of support or comfort for admitting any degree of uncertainty or lack of knowledge. And so we're not taught this stuff. Then we are bombarded with media images of lifestyles that are economically unrealistic. And my favorite one is an old one. It's dated at this point. But I mean, how many people have seen an episode of Sex and the City? Okay. So let's just suppose you are actually Carrie Bradshaw and you live in Manhattan and you're a writer on a writer's salary and you're dressing like that. You're bankrupt by the end of season 1.
Show 1, not season 1.
Yeah, literally. And Sharon and I meet people all across the country that literally think you can move to New York and live like that. So the second problem is these media images that are unrealistic. And then the third, and the piece that really makes it toxic, is easy access to credit. Unlike our parents' and our grandparents' generation, if they wanted to spend money they didn't have, they had to march their tushies into a bank office and stare the loan officer in his eyes, because back then it was a him, and explain what they needed money for and what they were going to do with it. And today, all we have to do is trot down to the mailbox in our PJs and open up a credit card application, and we're off to the shopping races. So that's how we ended up here. But the reason Sharon and I wrote On My Own 2 Feet, a modern girl's guide to personal finance instead of just a modern guide to personal finance is, well, personal finance is very important to both genders, and it is equally problematic for both genders. We're extra concerned about us ladies because statistically speaking, we're the ones that are left holding the bag at the end of the day. I mean, literally. So every time either one of us says this stat, our hairs stand up on our arms. But 80% of men die married. 80% of women die single. And it's not because we're killing the men off. It's because of higher divorce rates and longer lifespans. And the problem is that today, for 2/3 of women over the age of 65, 2 out of every 3 women you see over the age of 65, they're relying on meager Social Security payments as their primary source of income. And the reason we wrote this book is that it doesn't have to be this way. If you do a few simple things right, if you save, if you invest, and you protect, starting as early as you possibly can, and it's never too late to start, you can literally put yourself on the path to financial nirvana. And that's the background context for the book and for what we hope will spawn into a nationwide movement where woman to woman, the word gets passed about the importance of financial literacy. The last thing I want to say before handing it over to Sharon to talk about savings is to emphasize that while we wrote this book for women, in no way, shape, or form are we implying that women are coming to this subject from a position of weakness. And in fact, we're coming to it from the most powerful position in the history of the world that women have ever been in. And if you look at almost any realm, whether it's the corporate realm, whether it's the realm of government, whether it's the sciences, it's the arts, you've got women who are excelling beyond their wildest dreams, both professionally and financially. So we're coming at this from a place of strength, but it is extra important for us because we do live longer and we are the ones statistically holding the bag. So with that, let me turn it over to Sharon to give you the first power tool to put in your bag.
So with that, here's the good news, ladies. Personal finance does not have to be difficult. If you ever encounter a situation where something seems difficult when it comes to your finances, it really doesn't have to be. We're going to lay out 3 power steps to your financial success. They're saving, investing, and protecting yourself so your prince or princess charming doesn't essentially ruin your finances. It's that simple. What we're talking about isn't on my own 2 feet. This is kind of the highlights of what's in the book. So first of all, saving. When do you start saving? It's kind of like asking your dermatologist when to start using sunscreen. What's the answer? Now. It's now. Same with savings. And why do you save? Well, you save for 3 reasons. The first reason you save is for what's called an emergency fund. Now, that might sound pretty straightforward, but here's a shocking statistic for you. The average woman in her 20s and 30s has about $500, actually less than that, saved. But her average unexpected expenses in a given year, what do you think her average unexpected expenses are? 2,000, exactly. 2,000. Study showed it was 2,000. Well, so what happens then? Say your car breaks down. Say that you have a home repair. Say you need to go visit a sick relative. Your purse is stolen. Pick whatever it is. But things come up. We live life and unexpected things come up. And the average person today does not save for an emergency fund. So while personal finance is simple, most of us aren't doing it. And it comes back to just not learning about it. So we're learning about it now, and now is the time to do it. I'm a child of immigrants and was not taught a single thing about personal finance growing up. You know, just kind of background there. And we can all do this. So the first reason we save is an emergency fund. We meet so many people who just taking that step, and the first part is getting to a $2,000 starter emergency fund. Ironically, one of them was my massage therapist, where her shoulders were up here before she had her emergency fund. And then just knowing that you can deal with life's unexpected is a huge step. Ultimately, that emergency fund needs to grow to 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Believe it or not, on my own 2 feet, and what Manisha and I are talking about tonight is not about your finances. It's about your life. This is about empowering your life. Our book is dedicated to all women for a reason. As Manisha said, we've never been so powerful in life. We have opportunities that our mothers and grandmothers couldn't have dreamed of. Well, it's time that we are powerful in our lives as much as we can be. And what do I mean by that? The cover of our book says, own your finances, own your life. How do you do that? Well, when you have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, you can do things like switching jobs for the right reasons. We know way too many women of all ages who are in jobs that they really don't like, and they're stuck there because they don't have an emergency fund. And they have, you know, we could give you a million examples, but Manisha's Carrie Bradshaw Sex and the City example, the cute shoes in the closet. Well, what do you really want long term? Cute shoes are great. We're all for cute shoes. We like cute shoes too. But this is about balance, right? This is about being in that power position to be able to switch jobs and be in positions that you want to be for the right reasons. It's about staying with a partner for the right reasons. We know so many people, again, this is basic stuff, but it's so important, who don't have that emergency fund, and they're with a partner that they don't want to be with. I mean, how awful is that? So again, this isn't about finance. It's about leading the life you want to lead by having your finances in order. So that emergency fund sounds simple, but get there as fast as possible to that $2,000 and build up to your power position of 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Second reason you save is for big ticket items. As lovely as it would be for us to just take out a checkbook and write a check for your home, living in San Francisco just doesn't work that way, right, for most of us, right? Most of us have to get a mortgage. Well, how do you get a mortgage? Save for a down payment. We've seen this huge housing crisis happen, and we really need to get back to the basics of actually saving for a proper amount for a mortgage. And you also save for things like a car, educational expenses. Those are what we call big ticket items, medium-term goals. The final reason you save, and it might make some of you in the audience, especially 20, 30-somethings, bored to tears, but I'll tell you why you'll be thanking Manisha and I years from now, is for your retirement. So some of you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, I live in San Francisco, retirement, whatever, I'll deal with it when I'm 40. Okay, well, here's your choice. Let's talk about two girlfriends, and they kind of illustrate why it's so important to start saving now. And let me just say, however old you are, this is not about looking back. This is about looking forward and starting from where you are now. It doesn't matter where you are. With time and commitment, you can get there. But here's why time matters. Two girlfriends, Amy and Xandra. They both save the same amount. They save $5,000 a year for 10 years. Congratulations, Amy. Congratulations, Xandra. That's no small feat. That's a big savings. Well, Amy saves from age 21 to 31. Xandra lives in San Francisco. You know, rent is high. There's a million reasons she has that she doesn't really want to start in her 20s or 30s. It's just so many other priorities. Nice restaurants, good martinis, you name it. So she starts saving at age 41. They actually both have a great return on their investments, 10% a year. That's amazing. Any financial planner who models 10%, you know, you can't rely on that. They just happen to have 10% per year. Well, when they woke up at age 65, what do you think that 20-year difference meant to their retirement? How much did Amy have? How much did Xandra have? Sorry?
Is it $500,000?
So Amy had $300,000, and Xandra had $2 million.
More than half.
It's more than that. It's more than that. But it's a huge gap, though, right? So it's just about knowing that time matters, and it's important to start saving now. Well, so how much do you save? We wouldn't be doing you any favors without a little bit of tough love. I'll give you the number in a second. Everyone take a deep breath. And know this. We know people who save on $30,000 a year. We know people who don't save on $300,000 a year or more. So once you're making a livable wage, and we have a lot of empathy for folks who are not making a livable wage, but once you are, it's all about a mindset and commitment. So with that, are you ready for the number? Okay, it's in chapter 1 of the book. You'll get the book after this. 15% of your gross or your before-tax income is what you save for your emergency fund, big ticket items, and retirement. Depending on where you are in life, that percentage will go to each of the 3 different areas, but roughly over your life, about 5% will go to your emergency fund and big ticket items, and about 10% to your retirement. The way the math works is if you save 10% of your gross, that is your before-tax income, for retirement year in and year out, if you do that starting in your 20s and 30s and invest wisely, and you guys are in such a great position. We meet so many people who don't have the opportunity to really work at Schwab, let alone, yet have a relationship with Schwab. You guys are in an amazing position here where you can actually take your hard-earned savings and invest it wisely. So many people are not in this position. So in that sense, it just warms my and Manisha's heart to be able to talk with you guys where you can do this. It's just thrilling, really. So the way the math works, if you're in your 20s and 30s, and you start saving that 10% for retirement today, the odds are at retirement you'll be able to live about the way you're living in your working days today. If you start in your 40s, all is not lost. It just means you're going to have to save a lot more than that. Now, all this said, we often get questions, well, Manisha, Sharon, I just can't find the money to save. I'm making enough money, I just can't find the money to save. Well, Manisha has actually shown me that a budget does not have to be a financial straitjacket. So we actually have in our book a chapter that's pretty straightforward on really looking at budget as finding out how money flows into your life and how it flows out, so it's bringing you the greatest joy. I still did drink a beer when we did our last budget, and I bought a purse afterwards, but I did it. So that's our kind of yin-yang of the two of us, and the point is the budget can be incredibly helpful. So this is not about being financially perfect. No one's financially perfect. I mean, how annoying would that be, right? But this is about finding that money to save so you can meet your goals. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Manisha to talk about investing.
So I want to go back to Amy and Xandra for a moment. I mean, it is massive when you think about this. Amy ended up with, she started in her 20s. She ended up with over $2 million. Xandra saved the exact same amount of money out of her pocket, but she started 20 years later, and she ended up with just over $300,000. Amy ended up with 7 times more money than Xandra. That is huge. But Sharon said something really important. She said they both were lucky enough to get returns in the range of 10% per annum. Well, how did they do that? They did it because they invested wisely. So by far and away, the most important decision you can make when you walk out of this room is to commit to savings. But once you've done that, you're not completely finished. The next step is to make sure that you invest that savings wisely. So I want to talk about 3 things here tonight. The first is why you should invest. The second is how you figure out the difference between money you save and money you invest. And then the third is what are some good things to invest in.